Welcome to Harborside Online. We're so glad you're able to join us today for this message. If you want to partner with us to produce more resources like this one, feel free to go to harborsidechurch.org/give, or you can donate by texting the word Harborside to 77977. We hope you enjoy the message.
Well, good morning, family. Once upon a time, there was an evil king. This king was so evil that he was known to sacrifice his own children to other gods. And even though this evil king thought that he was a big deal, he was really a king over a little country named Judah. And this little king over a little country, an evil king over the country of Judah, he really had a big problem in the West. You see, in the West, there was a big king with a big country, and this big country was growing bigger every day. In fact, this big country in the West was conquering little countries and taking them over. And this little evil king of Judah knew it would be very soon when the evil king in the West, or the big mean king in the West, would come and attack the evil little king there in Judah. But the good news was that this little evil king of Judah wasn't the only little king of a little country that had a big problem. In fact, to the north of this little king of Judah were two other kingdoms that were little, and the little kings of these little kingdoms in the north decided that they would form a coalition in order to protect themselves from the big king in the west. And so they formed this northern alliance, and they decided that we're going to be better together to stand up against the threat in the west. And they decided to invite the evil king of Judah into their coalition to join forces. But the evil king of Judah was so evil that he didn't trust anybody. And so he delayed in giving a response to the two kings in the north and joining their coalition. And because he delayed so long, eventually the two kings in the north got upset at the little evil king there in Judah. And now this little king in Judah had another big problem. He had the big king in the west who could attack any day now. And now he had two kings, little kings in the north, who had formed an alliance together but didn't like the little king Judah there in the south. And so they could attack at any moment. But the good news for this little evil king in Judah was that God loved the people of Judah. And even though this king was a little evil king, God still loved this little king. And so what God did was he sent a prophet to this king, a prophet by the name of Isaiah. And Isaiah had a message of hope for this little king there in Judah. And the message went something like this: "Oh, little king there in Judah, you don't have to put any trust in the big king in the west. You don't have to put any trust in the two little kings to the north. All you have to do is trust in God. And God will deliver the people of Judah. All you got to do is just trust in God." This was his promise to the little king, the little evil king there in Judah. And God said, "I care about this promise so much that I'm going to send you a sign. And the sign will be this, as it says in Isaiah chapter 7. It says, 'Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel.'" Emmanuel. This is the first time in the entire Bible that this name, this idea, Emmanuel, shows up. And it's kind of a big deal. God's saying, "I am going to protect you against your enemies." In fact, about a chapter later, Emmanuel shows up as the battle cry for the people of Judah. It shows up in chapter 8. It says, "Emmanuel, raise the war cry, you nations, and be shattered. Listen, all you distant lands, prepare for battle and be shattered. Devise your strategy, but it will be thwarted. Propose your plan, but it will not stand, for God is with us." Emmanuel. I mean, that's what Emmanuel means. That it's God with us. What a beautiful idea. What a message of hope. God with us. And this name Emmanuel only shows up 3 times in the entire Bible. Twice in this book of Isaiah, and once in the Christmas story written in the Gospel of Matthew. God with us, Emmanuel. It was kind of a revolutionary idea. And it meant a message of hope to this little king of Judah, to the people of Judah back then. But God is kind of this God of depth. Kind of like there's many layers in the ocean. God takes words, he takes phrases, and he just packs them full of meaning. And so sometimes we can kind of get stuck on just the shallow meaning of a word when there's so much more to be understood. If we sing and we say Emmanuel without really understanding what it means, it would be like if one of you just decided to take and steal this present, maybe after the sermon, that would be fine because there's nothing inside, all right? You would just be bringing home a well-decorated but empty gift, which is sometimes what we do with the idea of Emmanuel, the word Emmanuel, sometimes what we do with Christmas. We decorate it real pretty on the outside, but we don't have a great understanding of all that's there. We don't have a great context or content. So it's like we go home after this service with a decorated present that's empty on the inside. But that's not how it has to be. And if you'll just kind of hang with me this morning, I want to give you some more to walk away with. I want to give you something that'll fill up your arms when you walk out of here, a little more meat, a little more context. But really the question you're going to have to ask yourself is, do you want it? Because it might be a little painful to get there this morning. It might be a little heavy to walk away with this morning. And it's available to you, but you're going to have to decide, do I want to have it? Well, let's just kind of start and peel through the first couple layers of the idea of Emmanuel. And let's just start. This is what it would mean to that king. This is what it would mean to the people of Judah. And let's just start with the first noun that shows up within the name. It's the idea of God. And it would mean something like this, that there will be a divine intervention, that God is going to get involved in the situation, that God himself will be involved. And I mean, that's good news for the people of Judah. That's good news even for us today, that God could get involved in our situation. And then if you go to the verb that exists within the name, within the idea, you come to this with idea. And with would mean a deliverance of God's people. It would mean that God is with us. He is for us. He will fight in battle on our behalf. Now, that's a wonderful idea, but it wasn't an uncommon idea back then. I mean, there were other nations who believed in other gods, and they believed if you could just sacrifice enough, if you could worship these other gods enough, perhaps you could convince these gods to get involved in your situation and fight for you in battle on your side. But this next part of the word Emmanuel, this next noun that shows up, well, this was revolutionary for its time. There was no other idea like this in ancient history at that time. And it would be us. It would be that with us, that there will be a dwelling among God's people, that God will do this because he wants to be with us. There's no such idea with any other gods like that in world history at the time. I mean, there's other countries, they had other gods, but those gods were mean. Those gods were stern. They had rules. They were kind of borderline psychopaths, okay? They had issues of their own, let alone would they want to hang out with humans who've got all sorts of issues. I mean, perhaps you could coax a God to show up and fight for you in battle, but the idea that a God would come to you and want to be with you, that was huge. And it shows up for the first time here with the people of Judah, that God would want to be with us. This was a great idea. This was a message of hope. But wait, there's more. That was just the first layer of the idea. You see, God had more for his people to understand. And the question this morning is, do you want to understand it? Do you want to go there? But let me warn you, if we go there, it might hurt a little bit. And there's some questions we'd have to wrestle with. But at the end of the day, if we can gain this whole new understanding, it would be more than an understanding, it would be an opportunity for us. You see, God is a God of layers. God is a God of depth. But God often likes to stretch us. He likes to wrestle with us. He likes to help get us there by changing our perspectives, or better yet, changing our attitudes. And so in order to get there, we might have to have an attitude adjustment this morning. You see, there's kind of a place where God tends to meet us when we walk with him, and it's an okay place to be. It's not always the best place to stay, but God often meets us where it kind of looks something like this. Maybe you woke up this morning, and you woke up excited. You couldn't wait to come to Harborside. You couldn't wait to come to Harborside and see what you could get from Harborside. You love the worship. You love singing along. Those songs always make you feel good. You love when Lisette hits those high notes. I mean, it's just cool, and you like being a part of that, and that's great. And you love hearing the messages at Harborside. You love when Kurt preaches. Oh, no, it's Tom. But don't know what that guy's going to say, but we'll just sit and be polite and see what happens. But you love hearing the messages here at Harborside. I mean, they make you feel good. You feel like you're part of something great. You love what Harborside has to offer and what you can get from Harborside, and that's awesome. And it's an okay place to be. It's just not a great place to stay. And if that's where you are, or maybe you've seen this in other people, let me just tell you that kind of depth has about a 3-year shelf life. You see, somewhere within 3 years, Harborside's going to tick you off. At some point within 3 years, we're going to say something or do something or challenge you in a way, and you're going to go, whoa, what they're giving is not necessarily what I want to get. In fact, what they're offering is not what I get. In fact, what I want to get, they're not even offering. They're not even giving. I want to get this, and you may look down the street and go, well, there's a church over there that seems to be giving out what I want to get, and so I'm going to go on over there and see, turns out, yep, see, they're giving it to me. I'm excited to be there, and I can't wait to see what I can get from them, but after about 3 years, they're going to tick you off. And you go, oh, now they're giving something I don't want to get. It's not what I want. No, but there's a church over there, and I'm going to go over there, and it'll just repeat and cycle for about 3 years, and that's about as deep as your walk with Jesus as your faith will go. But there's this kind of other level that kind of requires an attitude adjustment. And maybe you're there. Maybe you woke up this morning and it looks something like this. I can't wait to go to Harborside to see what I can give God this morning. I can't wait to worship God and sing my heart out in songs. I don't like how all the songs sound, or it doesn't matter because it's not really about me. It's about God. That's who all the songs are about. I'm just going to sing my heart out and give God the praise he deserves. I can't wait to do that. I can't wait to hear a message, man. They mess with me sometimes. It's like a gut punch, but you know what? It helps me for the better. It helps change me, and it gives me something to strive for, something to work on for the rest of the week, and see if God can help just use me even more, and I can honor him with the way I live my life after hearing these messages and go out there and do something with it. I can't wait to see what I can give God through the message, through his word. I can't wait to show up to Harborside and serve. I can't wait to pour into somebody else what God has been pouring into me. I can't wait to help somebody else along in their journey and just give my time, my efforts to God. And God goes, whoa, I can do something with that. You want to go deeper? You want to understand more? I've got all sorts of lessons I can teach you when it comes to serving. I got all sorts of lessons I can teach you when it comes to giving. I got all sorts of lessons when it comes to leadership. Look, you're going to experience a whole bunch of things, and I'm going to show you firsthand, and we're going to develop a relationship that goes deeper and deeper and deeper, because there's no limit on that kind of attitude. And so the question this morning is, do you want to go there? Because what it will reveal, if we go a little deeper into the idea of Emmanuel, there's something more there to be understood, but it's more than an understanding. It's an opportunity. You see, there's this great idea with Emmanuel that God came to be with us, but there's something bigger there. It's an opportunity that involves us being with God. There's something more there. There's something deeper. There's something better to be grasped. There's something to walk away with our arms full and rich. Here's the problem. We could talk about us being with God, but sometimes we can be with God and still not be with God. I mean, this king of Judah was a godly nation. I mean, in name, God loved Judah, and so inherently the king was a godly king. However, this king heard what Isaiah proposed from God, and he just said, that's great, Isaiah, I hear what God wants to give me, but thanks, but no thanks. And he decided to go ahead and form an alliance with the big mean king in the west, with his enemy. He'd rather trust in his enemy than God, and I'll just let you know it didn't work out too well for him. But, he was a godly king, quote unquote, but he wasn't really with God. Judas was with Jesus, but he wasn't really with Jesus. He heard all the great sermons that Jesus preached. He saw all the wonderful miracles Jesus did, but at some point, what Jesus was giving wasn't what Judas wanted to get. And what Judas wanted to get wasn't what Jesus was giving. And so Judas said, fine, I'm just going to betray the guy. And even though he was with Jesus, he wasn't really with Jesus. You see, God has something for us, but it involves a wrestling match. It involves some tough questions to ask this morning. But it's something more. It's something more, and it's available beyond the promise of the Old Testament. In fact, God took that promise, and even though the king at that time did not want to receive it, God preserved the promise. And that promise so that it would not just bless the people of Judah, it would bless us today. God carried on that promise to the rest of us. In fact, we see that promise reestablished in Matthew, in the Christmas story, where it says the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. In other words, God didn't give up on his promise just because of us. He still offers it, and he brings it back to Matthew, who's writing to people his day, but also writing to us, going, guess what? It's more than you thought it was. There's more available to you than maybe you thought. It's kind of a big deal. And 700 years after the prophecies of Isaiah, God reinforces his sign, his gift, his opportunity for us to the rest of the world. Well, let's explore this. Let's start and let's go back and talk about God, the noun that shows up there in the name. Sure, it meant a divine intervention, that God himself will be involved, but it was really even farther to go, God as himself will be involved. You see, if the people of Judah understood it one way, it'd be like, okay, God's going to look after us. And Matthew says, no, you don't get it. God's going to look right at us, eye to eye with God in the flesh, that God is going to reveal everything he wants us to understand about himself in the person of Jesus. He's going to take all of deity and pour it into the shell of humanity in Jesus, that we will see God through Jesus, that Jesus is in fact God. He's not a great teacher. He's not a great prophet. He is God. How do we know he's God? Well, for one, every story about Jesus starts with, by the way, Jesus was God. Every gospel that starts with a story of Jesus. If you go to Matthew, it's Jesus is God with us. He's God. If you go into Mark, the Gospel of Mark, it starts with his baptism, and the sky opens up, and a voice from heaven says, this is my son. He is God. If you go into Luke, it starts with the Christmas story, and it says, he is God. If you go into the Gospel of John, it calls him the Word, and it says, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. They go, make no mistake. First thing you need to know about Jesus, he's God. And what was interesting, I think, is not only does he claim to be God, he convinced the people he lived with that he was God. Let me just tell you, if for some reason I decided today that my agenda was to convince you that I am the Messiah, I am the Son of God, I might be able to deceive you a little bit, might be able to do some party favor tricks or something like that, maybe shine some bright lights, say some really cool things. The last people I'd be able to convince on this planet that I am in fact the Son of God would be the people that live with me. They'd be the first to tell you, Tom's really not that smart. He's not that funny. You know, he's not the Son of God by any means. It's kind of like the people who worship Elvis. You know, they leave the presents on his grave. I guarantee you none of them lived with Elvis. Yet the people who lived with Jesus, that was the only rational explanation they could give to the world. His younger brother James, He goes, yeah, my older brother, he was perfect. He's God. His own mother, my mom would say, Tom is not God, I can guarantee it. Yet Mary goes, no, Jesus, he was in fact God. And they worshiped him as God. All his followers worship Jesus as God. I mean, do you understand how ludicrous that is? I mean, first century Jews worshiped Jesus as God. They would be the last people on the planet who would worship a human being as a deity. They weren't pantheists like the Eastern religions around them that believed that God is in everything and there's certain levels of God and you might have higher levels of God inside you, so therefore maybe we'd worship you. They weren't like the Greeks and Romans who were polytheists, who believed there were gods everywhere and there were demigods and maybe you're a human demigod so they might worship you. No, the first century Jews were monotheists. They believed there was only one God and he was not a created being. You ever notice how when angels show up in the Bible, they're kind of scary and terrifying, and it's people right away like fall to their knees and they're terrified, and the angels always have to correct them. They're always like, no, don't be afraid, get up, look, I'm a created being just like you. But when people fell to the ground and worshiped Jesus, Jesus goes, yes, you get it, you're onto something. I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the beginning and the end. I am not a created being, I am in fact God. You see, Jesus, as Lord, took everything in his power to become human, to be with us. So the question we need to wrestle with this morning is, what are we doing this Christmas to let him be Lord? Let him be the Lord that he is. Let him be God. I was listening to an interview the other day. It was two of the characters who are the voices of Frozen and Frozen 2. It was the voice of Elsa, Idina Menzel, who just put out a Christmas album that's playing in her house all the time now. And she was being interviewed by Josh Gad, who's the voice of Olaf. And they were talking because on the album they do a duet together, and they were talking about doing the duet. And then they started laughing because they're like, here, it's ironic, you have two Jews who made a Christmas album. And they started talking about how when they were younger, they always wished they could celebrate Christmas. And I thought about it. Everyone wants to celebrate Christmas. Just not everybody wants to celebrate Jesus as Christ. You see, we got to wrestle with that. If he's Lord, then it means we got to take off any accidental limitations we've placed on him this season. Oh yeah, this is my church life, this is my spiritual life, and you're a part of this, Jesus, but my work life, my house life, that's kind of me and over here. I mean, if he's a man, he can identify with you, but if he's God, he can deal with whatever you got. And if he's Lord, he deserves to be in every part. And it's real easy to slip into the idea that he's Lord of this part of my life, but not this part of my life. And Jesus did everything he could to show you in his lordship that he wants to be with you. And the question for us to wrestle with is, are we going to take advantage of this opportunity and simply let him be Lord, let him be God of every part? See, there's this other idea, and the idea of with. I mean, if you kind of take the verb in the name of Emmanuel, yes, you get a deliverance of God's people. Yes, you get God as for us. But if you dig deeper into the Hebrew, it's not he's just for us. He's from us. He's from the offspring of woman, and he is beside us in the battle. He's right there with us. In fact, John, he writes it this way in John chapter 1. It says that the Word became flesh and he made his dwelling among us. That's the Christian narrative. That's the Christian story. All other world religions, they start the same. They start with, okay, there's this higher being or higher plane of existence, and we can all agree we're not there. We're down here. And all the other world religions go, don't worry, we have for you a moral teacher, we have a prophet, we have somebody who's going to give you great advice, and if you could do enough morality, if you could do enough good deeds, perhaps it's going to take you a couple lifetimes, but perhaps you can kind of get there and eventually kind of earn your way up to be in this higher existence or coexist with this higher being. But this is where Christianity, the story, changes. It separates itself from all other world religions. In other words, they go, oh yes, there's a higher being, there's a better place for you to exist, and yes, you're down here, but we don't have for you a moral teacher. We don't have for you a good prophet. No. There's not enough morality or goodness you can do to get up to be with here, so that's all right. God said, you know what? I'll pay the cost, and I'll do whatever it takes to be with you. I will come in the flesh of Jesus and we will be together. When all this is wiped away, when everything around us is wiped away, we will still be together, now and for always. I want to be with you, beside you, for you, from you. This is the story. This is the Christian narrative. This is what stands out different from any other world religion. You ever notice how in the Old Testament, whenever God shows up, he's scary? He's a thunderstorm, he's a pillar of fire, he's a whirlwind. And yet, when he shows up in the New Testament as Jesus, he's a baby, vulnerable, homeless. Why? So that he's approachable as he approaches us. See, God doesn't want us to just see him. God wants us to get to know him. It'd be like this Christmas if one of your gifts, you open it up and it was tickets to the new Taylor Swift show. She's coming through town. You can go to the arena. You can be in the same building. She's going to be on stage. You're going to be in the audience, and you're going to experience Taylor Swift. And you can be like, I was in the room with Taylor Swift. You'd be real excited. But you'd be even more excited if it wasn't just you got to go to the concert. You got VIP backstage passes. You got to go backstage. You got to see Taylor Swift, look her in the eyes, hang out with her. You had way more of an experience with Taylor Swift, and that's what God's saying. I don't want you to settle for an experience. I want you to go for the encounter. I want to look at you eye to eye. I want to be with you. In fact, we know that God did everything he could to be near to us. So the question we wrestle with this morning is, what are we doing this Christmas to be near to him? What are we doing? We have an opportunity. Are we taking advantage of it for us to be with God? What are we doing these next few days to be close to him? I mean, we're kind of trying to do a similar thing that Jesus modeled for us. We're going out to the field to meet our community where they are and model for them who it's all about. And yes, we're going to do that, but are we doing that in our own lives in preparation for what we're doing with our community? Well, then there's this whole other idea that goes a whole nother level deeper, and that's us. Sure, the us, it would mean that... There you go, a dwelling among God's people, that God wants to be with us, which is great. But it goes a step further to let us know that God is here now. We don't have to wait anymore. He's here to be with us right now. In fact, that's what Jesus told us. He told us that he would be with us and he's not going anywhere. In fact, that's the last thing he told his followers. He said that I will be with you even to the very end of the age. See, we need that. We need that story. We need God to pay the price, to conquer sin on our behalf and give us new life, to come to be with us. That's the story, and that's what we need. The question this morning is, who do you want to be in the story? One of my favorite stories I heard when I was over in Italy this summer is the story of Michelangelo, and we know Michelangelo was a great artist who did the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and did a wonderful work of art there. He did such a good job that 35 years later, the Pope and the Vatican officials begged Michelangelo to please come back and do another work of art for us. And so at age 60, Michelangelo came back to the Sistine Chapel to paint what would be kind of the interior front wall. And there on the interior front wall, he painted what was called the Last Judgment. And there in this work of art, Jesus is center of the painting, and he's got one arm where he's raising the saints to heaven and one arm where he's pushing down the sinners to hell. And there was one cardinal official. He's very excited that Michelangelo will come and do this painting. His name was Cardinal Baggio de Cesena. And Cardinal Baggio said, Michelangelo, I'm so glad you've come to do this, but I do need to tell you something. You're kind of painting it all wrong. The way you're going about this work of art is not really how you should be doing it. And Michelangelo said, Cardinal Baggio, what's the problem? He says, well, everybody you're painting in the painting is naked. You can't paint a bunch of naked people in church. He's like, to make it worse, I mean, this is like in back where the stage is. And so the priests are going to come out, stand at the podium, reading the scripture, but everybody's going to be looking behind them at all the nude people. You can't do that. And Michelangelo said, Cardinal Baggio, it's the Last Judgment. When we stand before Jesus, we are laid bare. There's nothing we can hide. He sees it all our bumps, all our bruises, all our scars. He's going, this is accurate. But Cardinal Baggio, he wouldn't relent, and he just kind of became a thorn in Michelangelo's side. To eventually Michelangelo said, fine, I will paint some cover-up in the painting. And so Cardinal Baggio left the room, and Michelangelo decided to take the likeness of Cardinal Baggio and paint it into the Last Judgment. And he painted the likeness of Cardinal Baggio as Minos, the gatekeeper of hell. And he painted on him ears of a donkey, and then he covered him up. In fact, he's the only person covered up in the painting by Michelangelo. He covered him up with a snake winding around him and biting him in the privates. You can see why it's my favorite story. Here's what I learned, though. We all show up in the painting, for good or bad. We all show up in the story. Who do you want to be in the story? Do you want to be the person that said, oh, Jesus, I can't wait to receive the gift you have, but let me just tell you what I don't like. Let me just tell you what you're giving. I don't really want it, and what I want to get, you're not really giving. And let me just argue. Do you want to be the one who argues with the artist, or do you want to be the one who celebrates you get to be in the art? The one who goes, whoa, I get to be a part of this story. I have an opportunity for us to be with this type of God. You see, that's the story. Jesus does everything he can to submit everything to us. The question this Christmas is, what are we doing this Christmas to submit everything to him? Jesus goes, I want an encounter with you. And all you got to do to receive everything is show up with nothing. Show up with your arms empty. Show up with them open, ready to receive. But that's not what we do. No, we tend to greet Jesus in our encounters with our arms full of our arguments, full of our proofs, full of our reasons why. Oh, Jesus, I've had a bad life. I deserve a break, and it needs to come from you. Oh, Jesus, I've had a good life. I've really been obedient. I deserve to get something from you. And Jesus is like, no, you don't get it. I told you to show up with your arms empty. So I'll give you another chance. You can lay it all down at my feet right now. I need those arms empty so they can receive and embrace, and so that I can fill them up with what I've brought to this encounter, and you can walk away full. That's what I need. And guess what? You don't have to bring any argument. You don't need to bring any proof, because I already decided it's you. I chose you. I died for you. I love you. I mean, that's the beauty of us. Yes, the noun, it shows up and it means everybody, but at the same time, it means just you. That if Jesus had it all to do over again, he would still come down to this earth. If you were the only person on the planet, he would still come down to be with you. If he had it all over to do again, to die for someone, the name that's tucked, the idea that's tucked in Emmanuel is that he would still die if it was just meant it was for you. And there's nothing you can hide from him. He still picked you, even though he could see it all. All your bumps, all your bruises, all your scars, all your baggage, and he still picks you. That's what he wants us to know this Christmas. Yes, God is with us, but he has given us a great opportunity to experience him in a whole wonderful way. An opportunity for us to be with God. He says, I just want you to show up fully exposed, ready to be fully embraced and fully accepted. What are we doing this Christmas to make sure we take advantage of the opportunity for us to be with this type of God?